We'll just blindly scroll through.
Right. All of them designed to basically enforce our promises to each other.
Exactly. But today, for this deep dive, we're looking at a case study of what actually happens to the human brain when you strip all of those contracts away.
Just completely remove them.
Yeah, remove them, leave a massive pile of money on the table, and rely on literally just one thing: friendship.
And spoiler alert for you listening, the human brain usually cannot handle it at all.
No, it really can't. We're dissecting this timeless wisdom story today. It's called The Weight of a Broken Promise.
It's such a heavy narrative.
It really is.
Huh.
On the surface, it's a story about two friends and a sealed pouch of life savings.
Mhm.
But underneath that, it is this brutal, totally fascinating examination of, like, unmonitored trust.
Right, because it strips away all the modern noise we usually rely on. When we look at this text, we aren't just reading some quaint fable about a misty riverbank.
Right.
We are looking at a highly isolated psychological environment. It really forces us to examine the mechanics of betrayal, not as some grand malicious explosion,
But as a slow, quiet erosion.
exactly, a quiet erosion of boundaries.
So let's look at the baseline conditions the story sets up.
Huh.
Picture this. We are in a small settlement near a river crossing.
Very atmospheric.
Yeah, a really immersive setting.
Yeah.
And there are these two men. They have an effortless family-level bond,
Yep.
but they have completely opposing temperaments.
Which is key here.
Right. One is incredibly quiet and measured.
Yeah.
He only speaks when it's absolutely necessary.
Stoic type.
Exactly. And the other is warm, generous, and just, very quick with his emotions.
Got heart on his sleeve kind of guy.
Yeah. So a season of severe hardship hits the region. Trade slows down, crops fail, there's economic anxiety everywhere.
Just a really desperate environment.
Desperate. And the quiet friend has to leave urgently for family matters across the river. But before he goes, he hands his generous friend a sealed pouch.
And this isn't just pocket change.
No, this is his entire life savings for the year. And the instruction is super simple. He says, keep it safe. Give it back exactly as it is when I return.
Just a completely pure, unmonitored request.
Yes, and that is the crucial variable here. There are absolutely no witnesses, no written documents, just a pouch changing hands in a room.
Which, honestly, is the catalyst for everything that follows. I mean, if we think about this in terms of everyday behavior, a contract is basically an outsourcing of trust, right?
Like putting the trust into the paper instead of the person.
Exactly. When you sign a document, the paper holds the weight. The system holds the weight. The consequences for breaking the agreement they're externalized.
Right. You don't have to rely entirely on your own moral compass because, well, the threat of a lawsuit is keeping you in line.
Yeah, but in this scenario, with no external scaffolding at all, the entire moral weight rests on a single human being's character.
I do want to challenge that premise just a bit, though, because, people entrust unmonitored weight to their friends all the time.
Sure, they do.
Like, we trust a neighbor with a house key, right?
Yeah.
We trust a friend to look after our kids.
Yeah, everyday trust.
So why does the brain fail so spectacularly when the unmonitored weight happens to be a pouch of currency? Shouldn't a lifelong friendship be stronger than a legal document?
Well, it should theoretically be stronger, sure, but we are dealing with human hardware here, and it is highly susceptible to situational pressure.
Meaning the environment changes the rules.
Right. A house key isn't a fungible resource. It can't immediately solve your imminent threat of starvation or death. But money can.
Ah, I see what you mean.
When the environment introduces severe hardship, which the story explicitly outlines, the brain's survival mechanisms just start directly conflicting with its moral identity.
So the human mind just isn't designed to hold that much unmonitored, highly useful weight.
Not indefinitely, no. Eventually, without structure, it buckles.
And that structural buckling is exactly what we see. We watch this really tragic psychological descent of the friend who is left holding the pouch.
It's so hard to read, honestly.
It is. Weeks pass, and the text makes this incredible observation. It notes that at first the pouch meant nothing more than a responsibility. But then it says, quiet objects sometimes grow louder in the mind.
Quiet objects grow louder. That is just brilliant phrasing.
It's so cinematic. The pouch transitions from just a physical object into a constant psychological presence.
Especially because he's surrounded by pressure.
Right. He has a demanding trader at his door. His roof needs repairs. He has debts to settle. Everything is pressing down on him.
And this is exactly where the internal conflict starts. The external pressures of his life are actively pushing against the internal boundary he set with his best friend.
It reminds me of structural load limits in civil engineering.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, a bridge almost never collapses because of a sudden explosive force.
Right.
It collapses from microscopic, invisible stress fractures.
Ah, that just build up over time.
Exactly. They accumulate under an unmonitored heavy load. And the man's internal monologue starts generating these microscopic fractures.
The rationalizations.
Right, he starts telling himself, I am not stealing. I am only borrowing. I can replace it before he returns.
The rationalization mechanism is just so crucial here because the human ego is aggressively engineered to protect its own self-image.
Nobody wants to be the villain in their own story.
Exactly. If this man looks in the mirror and says, I am actively stealing my best friend's life savings, the psychological pain of that it's just too severe.
So his brain protects him by rebranding the crime.
Yes. Borrowing sounds practical. It implies a temporary state. It implies a noble intention to restore the balance later.
But wait, let's play devil's advocate for a second. Isn't that a bit rigid on our part? I mean, if the man's family is really suffering, if he's facing total ruin,
Yeah.
doesn't basic survival naturally override a handshake agreement? How do we separate absolute morality from biological survival? Like, can we really judge the borrowing excuse that harshly?
Well, we aren't judging it from a place of lacking empathy, right? We're just analyzing the reality of the action.
Okay, fair.
Survival instincts absolutely drive the behavior. That makes it deeply human and totally understandable. But the psychological trap is his belief that his need somehow neutralizes the betrayal.
Ah, right.
The source text makes this profound distinction. It says need may explain a wrong act, but it completely fails to erase it.
Wow. Need explains it, but doesn't erase it.
Right, need provides context. But, like, if I take your water because I am dying of thirst, the objective reality is that I still took your water.
And I no longer have it.
Exactly. The rationalization of borrowing is just a moral loophole he built to survive his own conscience, but it doesn't change the structural damage he's doing to the trust.
And that structural damage becomes permanent on this one pivotal night. This scene is so vivid.
It really is the turning point.
The house is silent. He takes the pouch out under the lamp. He notices it feels kind of heavy, and he finally breaks the seal.
Just a terrible decision.
And inside, he finds the neatly stacked coins. But he also finds a ring wrapped in a small piece of cloth.
The anchor.
Yes. But he ignores the ring, basically. He just takes a few coins to resolve an urgent debt. But the barrier is broken now. One handful soon becomes another handful.
It always does.
Right. The temporary excuse just morphs into a hidden habit.
Because that rationalization of borrowing works so effectively in his head during the daylight, it completely disarms him when the physical temptation is actually sitting right in front of him.
He's already convinced himself it's fine.
Exactly. Once the physical seal is broken, the psychological seal is broken too. The boundary shifted from I will not touch this to I will only touch what I absolutely need.
Which is a highly subjective target.
An endlessly movable target. You can justify almost anything as a need once you start.
So this sets up the inevitable return of the quiet friend.
Mm-hmm.
And the tension in this reunion scene, I mean, it is suffocating.
Oh, absolutely suffocating.
So the friend comes back from across the river. He looks exhausted, but he's relieved to be home. He asks for the pouch.
Just a simple request.
Simple request. The guilty friend brings it over. The returning friend opens it, counts the coins once, then counts them a second time.
You can just feel the air leaving the room.
Yes. He unfolds the cloth. He finds the ring still there, but he immediately senses the physical weight has changed. And before he can even speak a single syllable.
Before any accusation is even formed.
Exactly. Before anything is said, the guilty friend just blurts out, I kept it safe, exactly where you left it.
It is such an incredible psychological tell. I mean, the guilty party volunteers a defense against a charge that hasn't even been made.
That's a biological tripwire. It reminds me of the telltale heart effect, you know.
Yes. Perfect analogy.
The nervous system just overrides all logic. Like a kid yelling, I didn't break the vase. The second a parent walks into the room.
Right, unprompted.
The quiet observation forces him to preemptively expose his own lie because the internal pressure is just way too high.
Guilt intrinsically demands an audience, right? When you carry the weight of a secret betrayal, your nervous system is stuck in this state of chronic hypervigilance.
You're just waiting to be caught.
You're constantly rehearsing your defense in your head. So when the quiet friend starts counting the coins, the guilty friend's internal tension just snaps.
He panics.
Totally. The silence of the observation creates a vacuum. And human nature, especially a guilty human nature, is terrified of a vacuum.
So he tries to fill it with his rehearsed innocence.
Exactly. But in doing so, he answers a question he was literally never asked.
And the returning friend's response is what makes this a masterclass in emotional control. Because he doesn't scream. He doesn't drag him into the village square.
Which most people would do.
Right. He just calmly closes the pouch and says, I asked for the pouch. I did not ask for your defense.
Ooh, that line is a weapon.
It really is. He weaponizes the silence. But why is silence a harsher weapon there than anger? Because if someone steals from you, the natural response is fury, right?
Yeah, but anger provides a script for conflict.
What do you mean?
Well, if the returning friend shouts, it gives the guilty friend permission to shout back. He could argue about the harsh winter, his demanding creditors, his grand intention to pay it back.
Oh, it becomes a debate.
Exactly. Anger creates a dynamic where the guilty party can share the stage and distribute the blame. Silence offers zero distribution.
It just leaves him completely exposed.
Silence isolates the guilty person. It forces them to stand naked with the unvarnished reality of their own actions. In evolutionary psychology terms, being met with silence from a core member of your social group mimics ostracization.
Like being cut off from the tribe.
Right. It signals that you are out. And that is deeply, fundamentally terrifying to the human brain.
Which brings us to this incredibly cinematic confrontation at dawn. The returning friend tells him to meet at the riverbank. There's mist hovering above the water.
Just a beautifully painted scene in the text.
It is. The returning man is holding the pouch in one hand and his father's ring in the other, and he reveals that the ring was placed there not just for safekeeping, but as an anchor, a test.
A test of the boundary.
Right. He says, I placed it in the pouch because I trusted that what mattered to me would remain untouched. He explains that coins, they can be counted, they can be replaced, but trust cannot.
Once the measurement of trust is reduced, it never returns to its original volume.
Never. And he delivers this brilliant diagnostic test to his friend. He places the pouch on the ground and gives him an ultimatum.
This is the crux of the whole story.
Yeah. He says, if you took from this out of need, say so. Need brings pain, but it can still speak honestly. But if you took from it and then hid behind our friendship, the loss is greater than money.
I can forgive a failure of resources. I cannot forgive a failure of reality. That is the core of what he's saying.
He's acknowledging the hardship.
Right. He's offering a path for the survival imperative we talked about earlier. He gets it. But he is drawing a hard line at the moral rot of using their friendship as a shield.
To commit a theft and cover it up.
Exactly.
And the guilty friend finally breaks under the weight of this reality. He delivers a confession that basically maps out the exact anatomy of a lie.
Step by step.
Yeah, he lowers his head and says, at first, I told myself I would replace it. Then I feared your return. After that, I feared your judgment. And in the end, I feared the truth more than what I had done.
It maps perfectly onto the concept of the fraud triangle, but internalized.
How so?
Well, it starts with rationalization, right? That rationalization creates a gap between reality and in his self-image. To protect that self-image, he develops a fear of consequence.
The fear of being caught.
Right, and that fear metastasizes into a fear of judgment. Ultimately, the preservation of the lie becomes his primary objective. The lie itself becomes more important to protect than the person he lied to.
Wow. So, based on everything in this sequence, at what exact moment was the friendship actually destroyed? Was it the physical taking of the first handful of coins under the lamp? Or was it the mental construction of that very first lie?
The returning friend actually answers this explicitly.
Right, he does.
He tells him, "You did not lose my coins when you opened the pouch. You lost them when you protected your lie more carefully than my trust."
So it wasn't the extraction of the currency.
No, friendships can survive massive logistical failures. Friendships are tested not just by loyalty, but by a shared commitment to reality.
The shared reality.
Yeah. The destruction occurred the exact moment the guilty friend chose to prioritize his own ego, his need to avoid the discomfort of confessing over the reality of their bond.
So it was broken in the creeping silence of those weeks.
Exactly.
It was broken when he tied the pouch closed again, knowing the weight had shifted, and just making a conscious decision to pretend. The physical coins were merely the casualty. The trust was the actual target.
Precisely. Trust can be completely dismantled long before the truth is ever spoken aloud. The architecture of their bond was hollowed out from the inside, while the outside looked perfectly intact.
We see the haunting aftermath of this hollowing out as the narrative wraps up. The guilty friend unties a cloth from his waist to return what little currency he had managed to scrape together.
He's trying to physically restore the balance.
Right. and the returning friend accepts the coins. But the source text is incredibly specific here. It says he does not accept them with relief, he does not accept them with satisfaction, he